In a moment that felt ripped from the pages of a nightmare, I found a gleaming hotel key tucked inside my wife's purse, a discovery that shattered every illusion I had of our perfect life. Its cold metal and unfamiliar design screamed secrets I never knew existed, igniting a fury and curiosity so intense that I couldn't ignore it. My heart pounded as I realized that this wasn't a stray trinket but a tangible token of betrayal. In that instant, the world as I knew it began to crumble, and a dark, unexpected journey into deception and heartache unfolded before me. I had always trusted Anna implicitly. Our marriage, celebrated by friends and family alike, was built on years of shared routines and quiet confidence. Every morning, we would exchange gentle smiles over breakfast. Every night, we whispered our dreams before drifting off to sleep. I believed our bond was unassailable, a fortress of love and mutual respect. Yet, that small, unassuming key challenged everything I had taken for granted. It lay there, hidden among receipts and lip balm, as if deliberately planted to be discovered. That evening, after returning from a long day at work, I casually rummaged through our purse for a forgotten receipt and unexpectedly uncovered the key. Its tag, embossed with a room number and the name of a hotel I didn't recognize, sent a chill down my spine. My mind raced. Had Anna been secretly spending time somewhere else? Had she been leading a double life? The thought was almost too painful to bear, but I knew I had to seek the truth, however bitter it might be. I spent the rest of the night wrestling with my thoughts. I tried to convince myself it was a harmless mix-up, a misfiled business card or a key from a friend's visit. But deep inside, an insidious doubt took root, growing with each minute of silence. The key glistened under the dim light of our living room, a silent testament to the secrets that might lurk behind closed doors. I knew then that I had to act. I had to find that hotel, check the room, and confront the reality that this key might unlock, a reality that could shatter my world forever. The next morning, with an aching stomach and a heavy heart, I made the decision. I would follow this thread of suspicion, however painful the unraveling might be. I drove to the hotel, each mile a slow descent into uncertainty. The building was modern and unassuming, a nondescript structure that blended seamlessly into the busy cityscape. I parked discreetly and, with the key clutched in my trembling hand, stepped into the lobby. Every step I took felt like it was weighted by the impending collision of my past and the secrets of an unknown future. After checking in under a pseudonym, I made my way to the designated room. The hallway was dimly lit, the carpet soft underfoot, yet every sound, the faint hum of fluorescent lights, the distant murmur of voices, seemed amplified by my mounting anxiety. When I finally reached room 408, I paused before the door, my heart thundering in my chest. With a deep, steadying breath, I inserted the key into the lock. The click of the mechanism echoed ominously in the quiet corridor, and as the door swung open, I braced myself for the revelation that awaited me inside. The room was dim, bathed in a muted, almost melancholic light that filtered through sheer curtains. It was elegantly decorated, with plush furniture and tasteful artwork adorning the walls, an environment designed to evoke comfort and luxury. But as I stepped further inside, every detail began to scream a different story. The bed was made meticulously, yet there were signs of recent use. A pair of designer shoes by the door, a half-finished glass of wine on a side table, and personal items that did not belong to a hotel guest expecting solitude. My mind raced as I pieced together the evidence. This room had been occupied, and not by a transient guest, but by someone who had a purpose, who had shared intimate moments in secrecy. I carefully examined every corner of the room. In the bathroom, I found a makeup bag and a set of expensive toiletries neatly arranged, as if to suggest that someone had taken the time to prepare for an extended stay. On the nightstand, a single, half-read book lay open, its pages marked with a red ribbon. In the closet, I glimpsed clothing that didn't match the style Anna usually wore, garments that were bold, fashionable, and entirely out of character. The scene before me was a tableau of intimacy and deceit, meticulously orchestrated to remain hidden, until now. Standing in the quiet of that hotel room, I felt as if time had frozen. Every object, every discarded item, was a silent witness to a betrayal I had never imagined. The room was both inviting and accusatory, a private stage where secrets had been shared in whispers and lustful glances. My heart, already heavy with suspicion, now pounded with the force of undeniable proof. I couldn't help but think of Anna. How could the woman I loved be capable of such duplicity? How had I failed to see the cracks in our once unbreakable bond? I took out my phone and began recording a mental note of everything I observed, each detail etching itself into my memory with painful clarity. I knew that this evidence was just the beginning, a glimpse into a hidden life that had been so carefully concealed. The key, which I had found by chance in Anna's purse, had unlocked far more than a hotel room. It had unlocked a Pandora's box of secrets that would forever alter the course of my life. With my mind reeling and my emotions in disarray, I left the room without taking any tangible evidence, my sole possession being the indelible images burned into my memory. As I drove back home, every red light and every passing face seemed to mock me with the truth I had uncovered. I was overwhelmed by a mixture of anger, betrayal, and a desperate need to confront the woman I thought I knew. The road ahead was dark and uncertain, yet I could no longer retreat into the comforting illusion of ignorance. I returned home, the weight of my discovery pressing down on me like a physical force. I locked the door behind me and sat in silence for what felt like hours, grappling with the shattering truth. The evidence I had seen in that hotel room was irrefutable, yet I felt a pit of despair in my stomach that I couldn't shake. How could a love so deeply cherished be so thoroughly betrayed? How could every moment of our shared life, every whispered promise, be rendered meaningless by this hidden, secret affair? At dawn, as the first light of day crept through my window, I made a decision. I would confront Anna, not with the fury of a man scorned, but with the cold, measured resolve of someone who had seen the truth and refused to be defined by it. I began to gather my thoughts, to organize the swirling chaos of emotions into a coherent plan. I knew that the conversation would be the most painful chapter of my life, a moment when all the hidden lies would be forced into the harsh light of reality. But I also knew that I could no longer live in the oppressive shadow of deceit. That morning, as I stared at my reflection in the mirror, I saw the face of a man transformed, not into a monster driven by blind rage, but into someone hardened by truth, determined to reclaim his identity from the ruins of betrayal. I took a deep, steadying breath and resolved that no matter what the outcome, I would move forward. The key, the hotel room, and the evidence of a secret life had irrevocably changed everything, but they could not strip me of my strength. I began writing down every detail in a journal, a raw, unfiltered account of the events that had led me to this devastating crossroads. With each word, I attempted to piece together the fragments of a shattered trust, to understand how a perfect marriage had come to be a house of cards, ready to collapse at the slightest gust of truth. I documented the evidence, not to use it as a weapon, but as a mirror reflecting the reality that I could no longer ignore. As the day wore on, I sat alone with my thoughts, haunted by memories of happier times now irreparably tainted by deception. I recalled the gentle laughter we once shared, the quiet moments of intimacy that now felt like echoes from another life. The images of that hotel room, the tangible remnants of an affair so carefully hidden, would forever haunt me. But in that haunting, I also found a strange resolve, a determination to rebuild, to forge a future that was defined not by the betrayal of the past, but by the courage to face it head-on. By nightfall, as I prepared to confront the woman who had unraveled our lives with a single, incriminating discovery, I felt a mixture of sorrow, anger, and an unexpected clarity. I understood that this moment, painful as it was, marked the beginning of an inevitable transformation, a journey that would force us both to confront the consequences of our choices. I didn't know where that road would lead, whether it would bring redemption or irrevocable separation, but I knew that I had reached the point where silence was no longer an option. And so, with a heavy heart and a mind burdened by the undeniable evidence of a life built on deception, I braced myself for the confrontation that would change everything. The hotel key had unlocked more than just a secret room, it had unlocked a torrent of painful truths that would forever redefine who I was. In that moment of reckoning, I vowed to face the aftermath with all the strength I could muster, to reclaim my identity from the ruins of a betrayal that had shattered our perfect illusion, and to forge a path toward a future illuminated by the raw, unvarnished truth. The day after I discovered the damning messages, I woke to a reality I never could have foreseen. My mind was a tumult of anger, disbelief, and an aching loneliness as I tried to come to terms with the fact that the betrayal cut deeper than I'd ever imagined. Not only had my wife, Vanessa, cheated, but she had also chosen a partner so close to our family, a man I had once trusted as a cousin-in-law, Michael, whose reputation our family held in high regard. The discovery was a brutal twist of fate that threatened to shatter every familial bond one once relied on. In the first hours of that fateful day, I found myself pacing the length of our once happy home, every step a silent march toward an inevitable confrontation. I reread the screenshots, my eyes tracing the details of Vanessa's unguarded boasts in the group chat. Each message was a shard of glass, the casual language of her affair clashing violently with the image of a loyal wife I thought I knew. I couldn't stop thinking about how she had openly celebrated the affair, almost as if she wore it like a badge. That thought festered within me, twisting my emotions into a bitter cocktail of outrage and profound hurt. I began my day by confronting my own feelings. I sat down with a cup of cold coffee, the bitter liquid matching the taste of betrayal, and journaled every emotion that surged through me. My pen spilled out raw confessions, the hurt of realizing that our trust was a carefully constructed facade, the horror of knowing that a man who was part of our extended family was involved, and the creeping dread that our family gatherings would now be tinged with scandal. I scribbled down questions that tormented me. Had I missed the early warning signs? Could I ever face our relatives after learning this? The act of writing, though painful, helped me sort through the storm raging inside me. Later that morning, I decided to reach out to my closest confidant, my cousin, David, who had always been a pillar in my life. David and I sat in a quiet corner of a local cafe, the murmur of other patrons fading into the background as I unfolded my discovery. I showed him the evidence on my phone, my voice trembling with a mix of fury and despair as I recounted every detail. David's face hardened with disbelief as he absorbed the shock. "I can't believe it," he murmured, his eyes dark with concern. "This isn't just about betrayal, it's a violation of family trust." His words resonated with me, reinforcing the painful truth that our family bonds were now irrevocably compromised. That conversation with David marked the beginning of a deeper internal reckoning. I realized that Vanessa's affair wasn't simply an act of infidelity, it was a rupture in the very fabric of our family's legacy. Our extended family had always been a tight-knit circle, celebrating each other's milestones, sharing laughter over holiday dinners, and offering support through every crisis. Now, the revelation that one among us had so brazenly betrayed our trust sent ripples of shock through that circle. I began to anticipate the whispers, the side glances, and the inevitable judgment that would follow when the truth eventually surfaced. In a desperate bid for clarity, I decided to secretly monitor Vanessa's behavior over the next several days. Outwardly, I continued my role as the supportive husband, but inwardly, I was a detective in my own life. I observed her closely, her mannerisms, the way she checked her phone when I entered the room, her sudden absences and the vague explanations she offered when questioned. Each small observation confirmed my worst fears. It wasn't a one-time mistake, it was a consistent pattern of secrecy and indulgence in a life that belonged to someone else, a life that she had carefully hidden from me. One afternoon, I followed her subtly. She left home with an excuse that was too conveniently vague: "I have a meeting with a client." Instead, I trailed her discreetly at a distance, watching as she drove through neighborhoods I'd never known she frequented. The GPS on her car's app, which I had surreptitiously installed under the guise of vehicle maintenance, confirmed my suspicions. She had stopped at an upscale shopping district, then at a boutique cafe with an exterior that screamed exclusivity. My heart pounded as I realized that each stop was a brick in the secret path she'd been walking, far removed from the routine we once shared. At that moment, a part of me wanted to confront her on the spot, to demand an explanation in a surge of raw emotion. But I forced myself to remain detached, to document the evidence with a cold precision that now defined my existence. I took photos from a distance, recording the locations, and later, I added these details to my growing dossier. It was as if every step she took was a step further away from the life I thought we had built, and I was determined to capture every painful detail. The more I observed, the more my internal conflict deepened. I was torn between the urge to let my anger erupt and the need to methodically piece together every facet of her deception. At home, I was consumed by an overwhelming loneliness, a sense of isolation that grew as I realized how deeply this betrayal cut into the core of our family legacy. Every family event, every holiday gathering that once promised warmth and unity, now loomed as a potential stage for judgment and whispered disapproval. I could already sense that the revelation would not only shatter my personal world but also ripple through our family, leaving scars that might never heal. In these moments of turmoil, I turned once again to my journal. I wrote about the stark contrast between the image I had of Vanessa, the loving, devoted wife, and the reality I was now forced to confront. I questioned every memory, the gentle touch of her hand, the laughter we shared on lazy weekends, the comforting words she once spoke in moments of vulnerability. Had I been so blinded by trust that I ignored the subtle signs of a life lived in secret? The questions burned in my mind, each one intensifying the agony of my discovery. I also found myself revisiting old family photos, trying to reconcile the happy images of togetherness with the betrayal that now lurked in the shadows. I saw myself smiling in those pictures, surrounded by loved ones, oblivious to the fractures that were already forming beneath the surface. It was a painful reminder that the perfect picture I had clung to was nothing more than a facade, a carefully constructed illusion that could be shattered by a single, unexpected truth. Amid this inner chaos, I began to plan for the inevitable confrontation. I knew that I couldn't allow this secret to fester any longer. The evidence was mounting, and the pain of ignorance was far worse than the anguish of confronting the truth. I drafted an outline in my journal, a plan for how I would address Vanessa, how I would lay out the evidence, and how I would demand the answers I so desperately needed. I rehearsed my words in the solitude of my study, trying to balance the raw fury within me with the necessity of a calm, measured approach. I wanted her to understand that I wasn't seeking a dramatic showdown, but rather a truthful discussion that would force us both to face the reality of our crumbling trust. Every moment of that period was an exercise in restraint and reflection. I was no longer the man who blindly celebrated the perfection of our marriage. I had become an investigator in my own life, a silent guardian of the truth, determined to expose every hidden lie until the entire edifice of deception collapsed. Yet, even as I meticulously documented every detail, a lingering sadness seeped into my bones. I felt the loss of not just a spouse, but of the shared dreams and plans we had once believed in so deeply. The realization that our perfect union was nothing more than a facade left me with a profound sense of emptiness, a void that no amount of evidence or confrontation could immediately fill. I began to seek solace in late-night walks under a starless sky, where the quiet darkness allowed me to confront my inner demons. In those solitary moments, I would stop to breathe deeply, to let the cool night air wash over me, and to remind myself that the path to healing began with facing the truth. I tried to find meaning in the chaos, to understand that perhaps this painful journey was necessary to rebuild a life based on genuine understanding rather than illusions. Meanwhile, the inevitable reality that my family might soon learn of the betrayal loomed large. I recalled the dismissive attitudes they had once held, how they had brushed off my earlier, subtle warnings with a patronizing smile. Now, with the evidence in my hands, I dreaded the day when their disbelief would turn into harsh judgment. The thought of facing relatives who once celebrated our union filled me with a quiet terror, but it also steeled my resolve. I began to document not only the evidence of Vanessa's infidelity but also the subtle cues of our family's reaction, preparing myself for the moment when the truth would no longer be a private agony but a public reckoning. As the days turned into a slow, torturous march, I knew that I was approaching a crossroads. I had gathered enough evidence to no longer live in the shadows of suspicion. Every piece of information, the screenshots from that scandalous group chat, the timestamps, the photos, and the digital logs of her clandestine outings, now formed a coherent, undeniable picture. The internal conflict between my desire for retribution and my need for healing had reached a critical point. I understood that to reclaim my sense of self, I would have to confront Vanessa with the truth, regardless of the pain it might cause. So, in the midst of my quiet war, I began preparing for that final act. I organized my notes, rehearsed the conversation I knew would change everything, and steeled myself for the emotional tempest that was sure to follow. My journal entries, once the raw chronicle of my suffering, began to evolve into a blueprint for transformation, a guide that would help me navigate the turbulent waters of betrayal and ultimately, lead me toward a future defined by truth and self-respect. Now, as I sit in the dim light of another sleepless night, the evidence glowing on my computer screen and my heart heavy with the burden of what I have uncovered, I stand on the precipice of a decision that will irreversibly alter our lives. I know that the truth, once spoken, cannot be unsaid, and that the road to healing begins with the courage to confront even the most unbearable reality. My silent storm has intensified into a raging tempest of emotion, a force that compels me to demand accountability and to expose the painful secrets that have long festered behind closed doors. I prepare for the moment when I will no longer be a silent observer, when my carefully gathered evidence will force the hidden truths into the light. The plan is set, the timeline is drawn, and with every passing moment, my resolve grows stronger. I know that the confrontation will be a turning point, a moment when the mask of our perfect life will be torn away, leaving only the raw, unvarnished truth in its wake. As the weight of each passing day settles into the depths of my being, I realize that I must soon break the silence. The path ahead is fraught with heartache and uncertainty, but it is also the only way to reclaim the life I once believed in. My family's disbelief, the taunts of those who once doubted me, and the haunting echoes of a marriage built on false promises, all of it now converge into a single, undeniable truth that I can no longer ignore. And so, with a heavy heart and a mind burning with determination, I prepare to step into the light, to confront Vanessa, to demand the answers that have haunted me for too long, and to let the world finally see the truth behind the perfect illusion. The silent storm has reached its crescendo, and I know that the next act of my journey will either shatter the remnants of our past forever or force us both to face a future where trust can be rebuilt from the ruins of betrayal. The days that followed that fateful confrontation blurred into a surreal mix of isolation, raw emotion, and the relentless echoes of a family torn apart. The scandal was no longer confined to whispered rumors at holiday gatherings or furtive glances exchanged among relatives. It had exploded into a full-blown public spectacle. I found myself thrust into a role I never imagined, not only a betrayed husband but also an unwilling catalyst for a familial drama that cut deep into the core of our shared history. In the immediate aftermath, our home felt like a mausoleum of broken promises. The evidence of Vanessa's betrayal, photographs, chat logs, and the damning screenshots from that group chat, had become an indelible record of our disintegrated marriage. Every time I walked through our house, the familiar objects that once held cherished memories now mocked me with painful reminders of deceit. The scent of her favorite perfume lingering on a scarf, the framed photos of our happier days, even the well-worn couch where we'd once laughed together, all now seemed to belong to a past that was slipping away. I spent countless hours in silence, sitting alone in our study, revisiting every painful detail in a desperate bid to understand how our perfect life had come undone. Family gatherings, once filled with warm embraces and jubilant celebrations, turned into arenas of hushed judgment and strained conversations. Relatives who had always painted our union as flawless now exchanged furtive glances and lowered their voices. My cousin, who had once congratulated me on my blessed marriage, now avoided my eyes entirely. I could sense that the truth, once hidden behind polite smiles, had shattered their illusions as well. The scandal spread like wildfire through our extended family, each whispered conversation, each sidelong glance, a reminder that no one was truly immune to the fallout of Vanessa's betrayal. The media, too, had taken an interest. A local tabloid had splashed headlines such as "Perfect Family Unravels," "Wife's Scandalous Affair with Cousin's Husband Exposed" across newsstands, and my name became intertwined with the drama. I was invited for interviews on local radio shows, and strangers in the supermarket offered me sympathetic looks that felt all too public. With every passing day, I felt my private grief transform into a public spectacle, a far cry from the quiet, painful journey I had once envisioned. The world was watching, and I was forced to confront not only the betrayal but also the collapse of my carefully constructed identity. Yet, amidst this overwhelming public humiliation, I found a strange clarity emerging from the darkness. The shock of betrayal, as excruciating as it was, had forced me to confront the deeper questions of who I was and what I truly valued. I realized that I had built my entire identity around the idea of a perfect marriage, an image nurtured by family, friends, and my own desperate hope. Now, with that illusion shattered, I was faced with a daunting, but ultimately liberating, opportunity. The chance to rebuild my life from the ground up, to rediscover who I was beyond the confines of a shared dream that had been nothing more than a fragile facade. I began to attend therapy sessions regularly, seeking solace and guidance from a counselor who specialized in marital betrayal. In those sessions, I poured out the raw details of my journey, from the moment I discovered the incriminating group chat to the painful confrontation that followed. My therapist, with gentle persistence, helped me navigate the labyrinth of my emotions. She taught me that healing was not about erasing the past or forgetting the betrayal, but about integrating the pain into a new understanding of myself. The scars will always be there, she told me, but they can become symbols of survival rather than permanent marks of defeat. Her words resonated deeply, slowly transforming my anger into a quiet, determined resolve to reclaim my identity. Simultaneously, I turned to writing as a way to process the overwhelming emotions. My journal, once filled with detailed observations and raw accusations, evolved into a sanctuary of introspection and acceptance. I wrote long, unfiltered essays about the nature of trust, the fragility of love, and the inevitability of betrayal. In those pages, I confronted my deepest fears and regrets, acknowledging that while the pain of Vanessa's betrayal would never fully disappear, it could become a stepping stone to something greater. I began to see that the act of exposing the truth, painful as it was, had forced me to grow in ways I never anticipated. Yet, the process of healing was not linear. There were nights when I would lie awake, haunted by memories of that crushing moment when I first saw the evidence. The digital confessions, the cold reality of a group chat turned scandal, replayed in my mind like a broken record. In those moments, the weight of every whispered secret and every deceitful smile threatened to drag me back into despair. I would often take long walks under a starless sky, the rhythmic sound of my footsteps a steady reminder that I was still moving forward, even when my heart felt as if it were shattering with every step. Gradually, I began to rebuild connections with friends and family who had remained steadfast despite the scandal. I reconnected with a few old friends who had always valued authenticity over appearances, and their support provided a fragile network of comfort. We spent evenings talking about everything from trivial memories of the past to the painful lessons of the present. Their understanding, free from judgment, reminded me that my worth was not defined solely by the betrayal I had endured, but by the resilience I demonstrated in the face of it. In an unexpected turn, I also found solace in creative pursuits. I took up photography again, a hobby I had abandoned during the turmoil of our once perfect marriage. With a camera in hand, I began to capture the world around me, finding beauty in the mundane and hope in the fleeting moments of light. Each photograph became a silent testament to the possibility of renewal, a visual diary of my slow, painstaking journey from heartbreak to healing. I started to write a blog, sharing my story in carefully crafted words that resonated with strangers who, like me, had suffered the sting of betrayal. The response was overwhelming. Messages poured in from readers who felt seen, who thanked me for speaking a truth that was both painful and liberating. Through their stories, I discovered that I was not alone in my struggle, that many had walked a similar path and emerged with a newfound strength. Their voices, echoing across the digital expanse, became a chorus of solidarity that buoyed my spirits on even the darkest days. As the months wore on, the raw edges of my pain began to soften, replaced by a cautious optimism that whispered of new beginnings. I learned that the fallout of Vanessa's betrayal, as dramatic and all-consuming as it had been, was also an invitation to redefine my future. I no longer allowed the memory of that digital confession to dictate my every moment. Instead, I chose to view it as a painful but necessary catalyst for change, a spark that ignited a journey of self-discovery and renewal. I attended a family gathering one quiet afternoon, my heart heavy with apprehension. The room was filled with familiar faces, but the air was thick with tension and unspoken judgments. I could sense that everyone had heard whispers of the scandal, that the once harmonious bonds had been strained by the truth. Yet, amid the awkward silences and furtive glances, I also felt a stirring of resolve. I realized that I could no longer allow my family's disbelief and judgment to define my life. I chose to embrace my truth, to stand tall in the face of adversity, and to let my story be one of transformation rather than perpetual despair. In that moment, I understood that forgiveness was not a gift I extended to Vanessa out of pity or weakness, it was a liberation for myself. By choosing to forgive, I would release the chains of anger that had bound me to the past and open myself to the possibility of a future where trust could be rebuilt, however imperfectly. The act of forgiving, I learned, was not about forgetting the betrayal, but about reclaiming the power to shape my own destiny. It was a slow, deliberate process, marked by setbacks and small victories, but with each day, I felt the heavy burden on my heart lighten ever so slightly. Now, as I sit by my window and watch the gentle unfolding of another day, I reflect on the tumultuous journey that has brought me here. The scars of betrayal remain, indelible reminders of a past that cannot be erased, but they have become symbols of resilience, a testament to the strength required to rise from the ruins of a broken marriage. I have learned that while the truth can be devastating, it is also the first step toward rebuilding, toward forging a new identity that is defined not by the pain of yesterday but by the hope of tomorrow. The drama that ensued, the public exposure, the family turmoil, the painful confrontation, has irrevocably altered the course of my life. Yet, within that wreckage, I have found the seeds of renewal. I now understand that true healing lies in accepting the bitter truth, in facing it with courage and using it as a foundation for a future built on honest self-reflection. I have chosen to let go of the need for endless retribution, to allow forgiveness to seep into my heart as a remedy for the wounds inflicted by betrayal. Every day, I make a conscious effort to rebuild a life that honors both the lessons of the past and the promise of a new beginning. I pursue my passions, reconnect with those who truly matter, and strive to cultivate a sense of peace that has eluded me for so long. The journey is far from over, and there are still moments when the pain threatens to overwhelm me. But I have learned that even the deepest wounds can become the source of our greatest strength if we allow them to heal. As I look toward the future, I do so with cautious optimism. I have come to understand that while trust may be fragile, the human spirit is remarkably resilient. I am no longer defined by the betrayal that once shattered my world. Instead, I am defined by the determination to forge a new path, a path where every scar is a reminder of my survival, every tear a tribute to my capacity to love again, and every day an opportunity to rebuild the life I deserve. This is my rebirth, a transformation born not from the flames of revenge but from the quiet, steady light of truth and self-acceptance. The journey from that harrowing night to this uncertain dawn has been fraught with pain, but it has also revealed the boundless potential within me to create a life of authenticity, compassion, and hope. And so, as I step forward into each new day, I carry with me the unyielding belief that even when everything you once held dear is stripped away, you have the power to rebuild, to forgive, and to find beauty in the unexpected promise of tomorrow.